Hello everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Textbook. We're going to be getting real about learning English, and this is Aisha, and today my very special guest is Chilla, and Chilla is currently a teacher at Elite Language Centre. She's been in many roles with us, and perhaps I better let Chilla tell us a little bit more about herself. Welcome, Chilla.
Sure, thank you. Hello everyone. So my name is Chilla. I'm from Hungary, and I have been teaching English for about 13 years now, and I have been fortunate enough to have done it in 6 different countries so far.
Oh.
And I am currently getting ready for my next adventure.
All right, so tell us what 6 countries have you taught in?
So I have taught English in Hungary, England, Spain, Italy, Nepal, Malaysia, and Kuwait is the next destination.
The next port of call.
Yes.
All right, great, exciting.
Which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, good. So our topic today is if you had one piece of advice to give a new ESL teacher entering into the workforce, what would that one piece of advice be?
Right, so I have been thinking about that, and obviously there are thousands of pieces of advice which we could give a new ESL teacher, but probably one thing that popped into my mind, something that could definitely help you understand your students a lot better, that would be to learn a foreign language, to sit in a classroom and to understand what it's like not to understand things.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to go back and start a language from scratch.
Yeah.
And just to really just to gain a bit of perspective, if you will. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the advantages of being someone like yourself, who's clearly what I would describe as a native level English teacher. I would say, like, you speak Hungarian, obviously.
Yes.
But you also are fluent in English. So it's kind of like, I would say you're like totally bilingual. Wouldn't that be the right way to describe it? You couldn't perhaps you'd say, no, I was Hungarian, I was born with that, speaking that. But actually, there's no way anyone can say that you don't have a native level of English, So for you, though, you were saying to me that earlier that, okay, you obviously spoke Hungarian from your family and so on, but you actually learned some other languages as well when you were an adult, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've learned about 5 different languages, and I'm not saying that I speak all those languages fluently right now, but I've learned German, Spanish, Italian, Hindi, Malay, Bahasa Malaya before, and I always found it just a fascinating experience, as a foreign language teacher, just to go back and sit in the classroom and to see what it really, just to be reminded what it's like. I mean, for me as a non-native speaker, to be reminded what it's like, to start, from the very basics and not to be able to communicate straight away, which is and how frustrating that can be. And also, just to be more patient. I find that it actually helps you, become a bit more patient with like total beginners, for example, and to understand where they are coming from a bit more.
Yeah. So what about, you must also find, because you've been in the student role, you must also be able to evaluate the teacher's role. Absolutely. In terms of what I'm sure you've had some amazing teachers, language teachers, but you've also had some really bad ones.
That's true. Yeah.
So what would you say you got from that, observing your teacher, your language teacher?
That's a very good point, actually, because I find that the more experienced I become, I wouldn't say the more judgmental.
Yeah, come on, be honest.
I get as a, sitting in a classroom as a student, because I'm still like, super keen, and I'm trying to be a good student, and all these things. But at the very same time, of course, you can't help but, you're also like, oh, like, I'd like more speaking activities, or I wish we would do more of this and that. And I've actually had, I have a recent experience with this, because I lived in Spain last year, and I attended the course throughout the entire year, and I couldn't help but, like every single time when the classes were, like everything was dynamic, and we did lots of interesting activities, and I was like, oh my God, that's exactly why that was just, to me, encouraging me to do even more and more of that, which I already do in the classroom, but just how enjoyable that is to have more of that.
So you're actually able to in that situation, you are obviously able to understand what it's like to be a student, but you're also kind of able to evaluate what works with a student and what doesn't in terms of the teaching styles. And every teacher has their own style, but like you say, you do go away and you ask yourself, wow, that was really dynamic and I really enjoyed that. And then do you find yourself transposing that onto your own teaching as well?
Absolutely. And now that we're talking about that, I actually had had two different kinds of experience, because first I started with one teacher who had a very different teaching style and method from the one that took over later on. And we actually noticed with my classmates that we learned so much more. We just found that it was a lot more productive. And then we actually sat down and talked about it, like what could have been different,
with the other students.
Exactly, with the other students and also teachers. Some of them were teachers themselves. So that was very interesting to analyze the entire situation, like what made such a big difference. And what we found is that the classes were a lot more fun. And not just a lot more fun, but the grammar part was a lot better paced. I just found that it was more personalized to the needs of the group, which I always find extremely important. And the other part is that it was fun. It was a nice combination of just covering all the grammar structures that were needed to be covered, and providing plenty of opportunities for the students to practice, for us to practice actually in different fun ways. So I have very positive memories of that second course.
Well, that's interesting. So learning another language, one of the things that popped into my mind was, the whole, at Elite we have this idea of someone as a native English teacher, which is the traditional version, which is the person from the UK or America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, that sort of thing. And then there is the other, Now, I would say that the other, to me, has a whole new lot of levels. For example, it used to be native teacher versus non-native teacher, and that was a very controversial issue. Nowadays, I would say that at Elite we like to say we want to employ the best teachers we can. It doesn't matter what passport they have, but we do consider them if they have native level English. That's what I think is the most important thing. A lot of people say, but if a person isn't a native English speaker, they will have an accent. I don't want to pick up an accent. This is the students, And then we say, hey, have you ever listened to someone from Scotland? Have you ever listened to someone from Manchester? These are supposedly native English speakers. I can't understand a word they're saying. Don't tell me it's an accent issue here. And not just accent, but they have all their own colloquialisms and everything.
And it's not something the students would be able to pick up anyway. You know what I mean? It's like all these different accents are beautiful to listen to, but it's not something you can actually teach. You know what I mean? Because you already have your own accent.
That's right.
And you do pick up, different accents. Like I have probably, developed this international sort of accent. Having lived in so many different countries. But I do believe, like, I couldn't agree more with you on the fact that it's not about what sort of passport you have anymore. It's about how knowledgeable you are, how experienced you are, and it's not even just the experience, because you have to start somewhere, obviously.
Exactly.
It's about how much you believe in yourself.
Yes.
I genuinely believe it all comes down to that, whether you are capable of standing in front of a class full of students and sort of like sell yourself, know what I mean?
Or commanding the audience.
Exactly, because it is a kind, it's other than just being a knowledgeable teacher and knowing your stuff, really knowing what you're doing. At the end of the day, it's also a kind of a performance, because you want it to be an engaged class, and an enjoyable, a fun one. You want the class to leave with a big smile on their faces. You know what I mean? So whether you do it as a native or a non-native, honestly, it all shows in your students' performance, and how excited they are to come to your class.
Exactly. Yes. And I think the accent issue, which you mentioned about having the international accent, I really do believe that. I do believe, even for myself. I mean, I'm from New Zealand. Even now, when I go back to New Zealand, I can't understand what some New Zealanders are talking about, because their accent is so strong. And they say to me, "Oh, you've lost your accent."
That means.
And that I don't know whether that's true. It probably is true, actually. But I'd say for the non-native English teacher, it is good for them to get out to other countries and teach in other countries.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's what makes the English more kind of international.
Exactly.
Because as I say, I think if you stay teaching in your own country, there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. But
absolutely,
you're more likely to even out your accent, I would say, if you're teaching in a number of different countries that are not your language, first language countries.
Absolutely.
So you were saying that you taught in Italy and Spain and so on. What would you say is the kind of current situation in Europe now with people who are learning, who are teaching English, who they are not at their native level, but they're not supposedly have the passport from UK or whatever? What would you say is that?
Yes, actually I have to say that the situation has improved significantly, and I was really happy to find that I was working along with a lot of non-native speakers from countries around the world, and it was never, not once, it was an issue. It was never an issue. And like I said before, I mean, you don't just walk into a language school like that. You obviously have to prove, that you should you are an asset to that organization. By that I mean there is a probationary period, there is obviously a demonstration class, and all these opportunities for them to see if you are the right person. And like I said, I worked along with a lot of non-native speakers, and the expectations are completely different, because what they want is a good teacher, regardless of the passport they have. Well, I have to say that in general, this is what I find. And one more thing just on what you said earlier, which I find extremely important, that it's not so much about non-native, native, it's about how open-minded you are, and how open you are to living in a different country independently. And you know what I'm trying to say here. So I find that if you stay in your own country and you are a non-native speaker, like you said, of course there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely your choice. It's just that if you want to get out of that country, then it could be a problem if you are not open enough, if you don't believe in yourself enough, if they can sense that, then it could be an issue. Which it isn't for a native speaker, because for a native speaker, no matter, regardless of whether they have lived in different countries or not, because their passport is from the UK or Australia, New Zealand, the USA, they might just immediately automatically get a visa, and then it's fine. So you might need to work a bit harder, but it's not so bad, honestly. I mean, I've been doing this for 13 years, and I haven't had any really negative experience.
And I think coming back to the original question, one piece of advice, can you talk a little bit about having, like, learning another language compared to the language that you grew up with and the language that you go to a class as an adult? Can you tell, like, what is the difference between those two experiences?
As in
like when you grew up Hungarian, you grew up speaking Hungarian. Yes. That language acquisition compared to the language acquisition of being an adult and learning a language.
Oh yes, I see what you mean. Of course, I mean it's it's amazing how deeper level of understanding you have, towards a language that you learn as a foreign language, like the structure, the grammar, like, learning it from scratch, being able to build the entire language from nothing. And then each and every stage you work on yourself, as in, like, you have to learn the grammar, the vocabulary, it's just something that you don't really have a conscious understanding of learning, like speaking your mother tongue, because you just listen to people speaking that language around you as a child, and you just pick it up as you go. You just learn what everything is. But if I had to teach Hungarian right now, I wouldn't be able to.
Oh, yeah, because I
wouldn't be able to without actually learning how to teach Hungarian. Of course, I've learned Hungarian grammar and literature and all these things, and of course, I speak Hungarian fluently, obviously, but I wouldn't be able to explain the rules and why, why this, especially Hungarian, is the second most difficult language in the world anyway. Really? So that's a different issue. But I'm just saying that just because I speak Hungarian, I'm a native speaker of Hungarian, I wouldn't be able to teach Hungarian. There are a lot of skills you have to be, first of all, a good teacher, and to understand what you are teaching. It's not just, it's not enough just to speak the language. You have to understand the structure of the language, and to be able to teach that to someone else is, again, it requires different skills.
Right. And actually, so really what you're saying, your one piece of advice is, when you learn when you're training to be a teacher, or you're doing your first few years as a teacher, it doesn't matter if you're a native or non-native teacher, you should try to learn another language.
Absolutely.
Like if you're Japanese, try and learn, and you're teaching English, try and learn French or something like that. That will at least expose your put yourself out of the comfort zone of being comfortable in that language and learning something completely new, so you'll get that feeling of what it's like to be a student, and what we were saying, you'll be able to observe the teacher and say, why is this teacher really annoying me, or why is this teacher so amazing, so you can reflect on yourself as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. And one thing I also wanted you to mention something about was how the native level English teachers today have a lot more opportunities than they used to. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I mean, I distinctively remember how difficult it was back, like 13 years ago, when I started. Of course, I didn't have much experience. I did have my CELTA. I did have my degree in teaching English language and literature. So it wasn't like I was just, which wasn't related to what I was studying. It was totally related, and I was already passionate about teaching English, but it didn't really matter because back then, I find that your passport mattered a whole lot more, and the opportunities were a lot fewer, and I mean, it never really stopped me. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I've always been courageous, and I always thought that when they didn't get back to me, I just went and knocked on the door, like I did here at Ali Language Center back then.
Exactly.
Which is, I think, quite it encourages people to hear things like that, because, and I always say that to people when they are discouraged by not getting the amount of responses that they expect. I think you just have to manage your expectations, and you also have to believe that you are where you are supposed to be, as in, like, if they are not interested in you and you really feel you have done your best, you have tried your best, there's only so much you can do.
That's right.
So
and it's kind of their decision, whether it's their gain or their loss is up to them, really.
Exactly.
I think it's like actually anything, you have to just keep pursuing the unthinkable in a way,
Absolutely.
And applying for jobs that you don't think you would ever have a chance of getting, but you might get them.
Why not? Absolutely.
Because things are changing. I mean, as I know myself, in Europe, there's so many people now, particularly in Northern Europe, who speak English so perfectly, and yet they have a Swedish passport, Hungarian passport, Norwegian passport. How can you say this person's not a native speaker? You listen to them and you think, wow, no accent, just absolute perfect English. I mean, that's a whole other topic which we'll do another time.
Sure.
How people have reached that level. But I think coming back to originally, again, bringing it back to that word of advice is, learn another language, like you say, and also, I think maybe we can add to that, if you are a native level teacher, not necessarily with a UK passport or whatever, make your expectations higher.
Yeah.
You might actually get more than you think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do not ever get discouraged by,
So on that note, thank you very much, Chilla.
Thank you, Aisha.
It's been a wonderful experience finding out about your experience, and I hope this has been of some benefit to a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of support and encouragement from this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aisha.
We'll see you again soon.
And thanks everyone for listening.
About 1,000 times. I mentioned, about 1,000 times. Aisha,